Good evening, folks. You joined me for another bit of motorcycle maintenance and a bit of upgrade. I don't really know what I'm gonna do with this video yet because I've got two jobs that I want to do. I want to do a coolant flush because my coolant is pretty old and it's getting pretty low up in the reservoir up there, and I put in a 70-30 mixture of coolant to water last time, and I want to get that back to 50-50 because it's going to be summer pretty soon here in Florida and it gets hot as hell. So I do not, well, a 70-30 mix would be better for that, but the reason I'm not doing a 70-30 and I'm just doing regular 50-50 coolant to water is because my second job today is going to be the thermobob upgrade. And I'm sorry, sniffling a lot, it's bad allergies right now, but gonna be doing the thermobob upgrade too. And that is a little piece that goes here and hoses around over to the radiator, and it is a radiator bypass hose. So these KLRs have a bit of a problem with running too cold, and if you've got a KLR and you've taken it out on the highway at all, you know as soon as there's a lot of wind coming through the radiator, the bike just cools off. And I mean, that's that. It runs, but it runs really cold, and it can cause your cylinder to become out of round after a long time riding it like that. It can warp slightly to where the top of the cylinder is wider than the bottom, or vice versa, or whatever. Yeah. So without a thermobob, these engines run strangely, where they get a little bit too cold, the engine isn't uniformly heated. Ouch. And yeah, so I'm going to be doing that too. And I think I want to break them into two videos, where one of the videos will be the coolant flush and the coolant change, and then the second video will be a thermobob. I'm also replacing the coolant hoses because these ones, they're not black anymore, they're really dirty. So I got some nice new black hoses that I want to put on as well. So we're doing a total coolant system overhaul. Only things that I'm not doing are like rebuilding the water pump or rebuilding the radiator, but I don't need to do that right now. So I don't really know what I'm gonna do with this. I have one idea that I might do all of the coolant flush, get the system flushed out and ready to be put on, or ready for new coolant, new hoses on and everything. I might do all that and then cut it and do the thermobob upgrade and just tell people, come over to this video if you want to see the preliminary steps, because you do have to drain the coolant system to do the thermobob, and then yeah, come back to the thermobob video or something like that. I don't know. I'm going on too long right now though. I got to get into the meat of the video, right? So I'm going to set up my tools, walk you through them, and we'll just go forward with the coolant flush first, and then I'll switch over to the thermobob video. So yeah, let's walk through the tools. So here's everything that we need for the coolant flush and change. Starting with our tools, we've got an 8mm socket and a 10mm socket with an extension. I don't know if that's long enough. I may need a longer one, but we'll come to that when we get to it. Got a ratchet, Phillips head screwdriver, needle nose pliers, and a long funnel. And as far as equipment goes, I've got some crush washers. I don't know if these will be the right size, but I've got some pretty small ones because there is a crush washer on the drain bolt right at the water pump. and it's good practice to put on new crush washers anytime you touch bolts that have them. So next we've got the stuff for our flush. This water wetter should be over here. We've got vinegar and we've got distilled water. So some people do these coolant flushes with a flush like chemical specially designed for coolant flushes, but you can just as easily do vinegar. It's acidic, so it will eat away at some of the gunk in there, but it's not acidic enough to like destroy some of your seals and hoses and all that. So vinegar is pretty good for that. And then distilled water. You mix vinegar and distilled water at a 50-50 ratio, and then use that to flush your system. You want distilled water, you don't want tap, because tap water can have some minerals and stuff in it that can get that can like calcify inside your water or your coolant system. And distilled water is free of any of those sort of minerals. So I went and bought some special at Target. I've also got some motorcycle specific coolant. I've heard that automotive coolant works just as well, but one of the guys that I watched a video of to prepare for this coolant flush said that motorcycle specific coolant is somewhat important. So I just went to my local power sports store and got some Suzuki brand coolant, or Suzuki specific. I don't think the brands matter too much. I've also got just an empty reservoir here for old coolant. And then I've also got some water wetter. I don't know if I will actually end up using this. I think I did for my last flush, but I don't know if I needed to. In the Canyon Chasers video that I watched as a reference video, he said that for racing, I think, you only run distilled water and water wetter as your coolant, and you don't put any coolant in, because there is like a certain chemical that is not very good for hot and racing conditions. So I don't think I will need this, because I'm just riding it on the road. And finally, we've got a basin. And I've also got a motorcycle jack. I don't think you need one for this job. Last time I did a coolant flush, I didn't use one, but I think I might use it this time, just so that it's level. Okay, so that is all the tools that I think I will need for this coolant flush. I will start by removing the skid plate, and then I'll put the jack underneath the motorcycle, and then we will start by draining it. So let's get to it. Okay, I started pretty late in the day, so I hope I do finish this, but we've got our bike jacked up, we've got our basin underneath. Now we are going to remove this 8mm bolt with the crush washer and let the system drain. But before we do, we want to remove this plastic piece so that we can take the cap off of our coolant reservoir. And we also want to come over to our radiator and just make sure that it's cold, that your engine's cold before you touch it. So these caps can be super hot, but we're going to loosen this. We're going to not remove it, because that will make the coolant come out too quickly when we're draining it, but we will loosen it. It's a little tight for me to do it one-handed, but yes. So I think for this plastic piece, we've got a Phillips screw here and a Phillips screw up here. And then, yep, we'll be removing the cap of the tank and then draining this. We've got our coolant draining. Next, we are going to remove our reservoir, and it's got a few, I think those are 8 mil, got 4 8 mil on each corner. And then after this is done, we're just going to take it and dump it upside down into our little reservoir right there. I'm forgetting what I'm calling that, pan. That's funny. Then drain that, and then I think we will move on to the water and vinegar flush. And we got this taken off. Just drain it. Ooh, that's gross. There we go. Probably better to do while not filming, but we also want to take a look inside and see if there's sediment at the bottom, and there's a bunch in mine, so I'm going to clean that out as well. And we'll just leave that there for now. Now, I don't totally know what the next step is. I think it is that water and vinegar, but I will clean this, reconnect it, and then I think get some water and vinegar through. I was correct. The next step of the procedure is the vinegar and water flush. However, just wanted to say that I cleaned this out, got all the sediment out, and I just replaced a couple bolts pretty loosely just so the reservoir is held on there. I will next be replacing this drain plug and then pouring everything in. But I did want to say here that the crush washer for this drain plug is closest to this middle one here, and this isn't the totally correct measurement of this one. This one looks a little wider, but the measurement for this is 12 by 1 millimeter, and I'm assuming that 12 is probably 6 by 12 by 1. I wonder if 6 is the whole, 12 is the total width, and 1 is the height. So yeah, that's the measurement, 6 by 12 by 1. That's the one that I'm putting on here. I should also say, I'm not a mechanic. Please don't follow any of my advice. This is all just for entertainment purposes. Consider these vlogs of a sort. I will be going to motorcycle mechanic school soon though, so pretty soon you'll be able to take my advice. That's nice, but let's move on. I will be putting this back in. I don't know what it torques to. I'll look that up, and then yeah, we'll be throwing in the vinegar and the water. Just slight mistakes. See if I don't follow my advice. We're going to be removing this plug a couple more times while we're letting all the flushing liquid go through. So I'm going to leave this old crush washer on and then put the new one on for my last Titan. And I just looked it up. The water pump drain plug gets torqued to 65 inch-pounds. That's inch-pounds, not feet-pounds, 65 inch-pounds. So at the very end, I'll be torquing that to 65 inch-pounds. Okay, now I don't have a little thing that I can use to mix these. So I think I'm going to grab my funnel and I'm going to gradually pour in a little bit of vinegar, and then I'll gradually pour in a little bit of water, back and forth until I have filled up the whole system up to the radiator cap up there. And that should be about 50-50 mix. But that's what you're going for. You're going for 50-50 mix. If you got a big pitcher, that's way better. I didn't bring a pitcher out with me, and so that's just how I'm gonna do it. So yep, I'm gonna fill that up all the way, and then I think I run the bike for about 10 minutes. Don't quote me on that though. I will check out my reference video and tell you in the next shot. All right, so that worked. I threw my long funnel. Make sure you get a long one. This one's, if you have a really wide funnel, it's tough to fit in here. So a long funnel in there, filled it with 50-50 water vinegar, just going one after the other, getting it roughly about the same amount in there of each. And then I also poured some distilled water into my coolant reservoir. And I think it might have drained through. We just want some liquid in here at maybe like the minimal level, just so that when we're running the flush through the bike, it's got some coolant in the reservoir to draw on. So I think this drained through. I think it went into the system. So I'm gonna pour just some more water up to this mark right here, and then we are going to be running the bike for 10 minutes. Actually, we're going to be letting all this liquid sit for a little bit, because it looks like the guy in the video mentioned that it like needs some time to fill in all the cracks and crevices in the system. So yeah, it looks like everything's just sort of filling up the coolant system. So I'm going to stop recording and just continue filling each of these up until they are full to, this one's full to the brim and that one's full to that little minimum line. And then I will run the bike for 10 minutes and just get it up to operating temperature, and then I will be letting it sit until it has cooled completely. So that'll be some time. It may be dark by then, but we're gonna finish this job tonight, so even if we have to do it in the dark. I got these both filled up, and just wanted to also mention to put the caps back on before you run the machine. So I've got that reservoir cap back on tight, and I've got this radiator cap back on tight. Okay, now I'm gonna run the bike and then let it cool completely. Just ran the bike for about 10 or 15 minutes. Got it up to temp. Now we are going to let it sit until it goes all the way back down to cool enough to touch. And I think in the meantime, I'm going to take a look at this thermobob job and see what I need to do it, and if I can do it tonight. I think this is the last step of the coolant change that I need to do before I put any new coolant in. We're going to drain that after the whole system has chilled back down, and yeah, and then I will replace that crush washer, and then it'll be ready to be refilled. But we are going to be replacing these hoses in our thermobob job, so I don't want to put the coolant back in yet. So yeah, I think I'm going to stop here for this job right now. I'll go and do the thermobob job. You can go check out that video on my channel. It'll be uploaded right next to this one. And then you will join me at the very last stage, probably when it is dark outside. Let's do it. It is almost 10 p.m. I've been out here a long time, but we got the thermobob done, we got the hoses done, we got the dashboard put back on. I have not yet filled up the coolant, but I think this is where my two videos converge. So this one will be playing both in my thermobob video and my coolant flush video. And so coolant flush people, you will disregard this, but we will be putting the tank, the seat, and the side covers back on next, I think. And then we will be placing the bolts back in our coolant reservoir. So we've got four, one of them's already in there, 4 bolts, 8mm, one there, one back there, 2 down at the bottom. And then we'll be putting our cover back on, our reservoir cover, after we won't put the cover back on because we'll fill it with some coolant. But yeah, we'll get the 4 bolts on, we'll get all our stuff back on, and then we will fill up the bike with our new coolant, wherever it is. And if you are doing the thermobob and you did not do a coolant flush, you would put the old coolant back in next. So let's keep going. Let's get all this stuff back on here. Okay, we got it all back together. Also for the coolant flush people, I forgot to mention that I drained that water and vinegar that was in the system, and after I let it run for 10-15 minutes and get all the way up to temperature. And I think that's all that you guys missed as far as you're concerned. I think next we're putting in our coolant. Now to do this, we will be taking off our radiator cap. Make sure that the engine is cold all the way when you do. Otherwise, it can either burn you or it's so pressurized that steam will like explode up the top when you open it. Kawasaki says that 1.3 to 1.4 quarts go in here. I don't know how exact that is, but we will be filling it up all the way to the brim of the radiator and then letting it all go through the system. We'll be filling up the reservoir also, I think probably to like halfway between both of the marks. And then we'll just be letting all that drain through. Then we'll be running the bike for about 10 minutes, letting it all of it drain through, checking it again to make sure that the level is still good. If it's too low, we'll add more, rinse and repeat until it is holding a good level. So let's do that. I'm just filling this right now, but I forgot to mention that this is pre-diluted coolant. So it's already a 50-50 mix of coolant and water. If you buy undiluted coolant, make sure to mix it 50-50 with water first. You can also do different ratios as far as that goes. If you're in a hotter climate, you can do more water than coolant. Water is a better cooler than coolant, surprisingly. This is pretty much just antifreeze coolant is. So it stops the coolant from freezing, and the coolant is the water. Anyway, I'm going to break open that second bottle and then make sure we get this to the brim. Okay, that is filled to the brim, and this reservoir is filled just about halfway. I'm going to replace the radiator cap and the reservoir cap sitting right over there. And I forgot a step, so after I drained all the vinegar and water out of here, I should have poured more distilled water through the system and just let that sort of drain through to get any vinegar out of the system. I forgot that step though, so I don't know how important that was, especially given the fact that we took all the hoses out and everything, and so it was, any vinegar would just sort of be little remnants in the engine. I don't know, it should be fine. I've got enough coolant to drain all this. If it's not, I might look it up after I get done with this, but I'm just going to leave it as is for now. I got the coolant in there, I'm going to replace the caps, and then we will run the bike for about 10 minutes and then recheck our levels after it cools off. And if it is not up to the brim at the radiator, I will refill, I will just top off the radiator. I'm having trouble talking today. I've been out here a long time. I've been out here 5 hours almost now, so let's get this done. So I just ran my bike for the 10 minutes and I'm cleaning up, letting the bike cool down before I take a look at that radiator. But my lighting, it just does not want to work. See that? It's shorting out somewhere, probably at that negative point right down there, the ground wire sticking out. I'm gonna need to, what I really want to do soon is do a total rewiring of this entire bike. I feel like that would be such a fun project. That'll be a little bit further down the line, but yeah, I gotta come out, figure out these lights soon. All right, I'm gonna keep getting cleaned up, take some stuff inside, and then see if I need to top off the radiator at all. Last couple things to do will be putting on this cover. It's got 2 Phillips heads, one on top, one on bottom, and then the skid plate. Those are 3 10 mil bolts, and it just goes under there. After that, it is a wrap. Oh, I forgot to mention the thermobob was working nicely, I guess. I didn't notice it, I didn't notice the bike heat up too much faster, but maybe it'll hold heat better when I'm on the road. Let's see. And that is a finished bike. Let it cool down, took the radiator cap off, and it is topped off completely. Reservoir. Yep, that's right in the middle. Right on the money. Okay, that's the job done. Let's see if I can get a good look at these new hoses. It's not going to look good in this lighting, but piece by piece, this bike is coming back together. Okay, last couple things. Both the cover and the skid plate. And then we are done. It is almost 11 o'clock. I think I started around 4:30, no, around 5:30 or 6. So out here for 5 hours again. Not totally unexpected, but still kind of annoying. Thank you for watching. If you watched, please like, please subscribe, please leave a comment, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye, friends. Bye bye.